Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and this is day 14 of the 80 Days to Your Dream Body course. Today's protein source is going to be venison steak, and today is a shoulders and arms training workout. And the theme for today's workout is going to be practical applications. So I'm going to be taking everything that I've taught you over the last 13 days and coming up with some real world workouts that you can incorporate. Now let's get started. And while we are resting, it is time to move on to the theme of today's video, and that is going to be practical applications. Let's say somebody comes to you and they are interested in building muscle. They have 60 minutes to train, 5 days per week, and all they have are dumbbells. You performed a mobility assessment on them, and it showed that they have restrictions in their hips and shoulders. On the active straight leg raise and shoulder mobility test, both of them came up positive. Then you performed a stability assessment on them, and it showed that they had weakness in their lateral rotators of the shoulder and their scapular retractors. When performing a strength assessment, you found that their elbow extensors were weaker relative to their elbow flexors, and they were predominantly an intermediate twitch athlete. When you did the movement assessment, generally they had good movement. However, with the overhead squat, they needed their heels elevated in order to do the overhead squat properly. In a case like this, what you could do is with the 5-day split per week, you could do something like back on day 1, chest on day 2, rest on day 3, legs and abs on day 4, rest on day 5, shoulders and arms on day 6, and then rest on day 7. With regard to the actual exercises, you would want to pick something like 3 main exercises for each of the body parts, with 2 supplemental focusing on the weak points and 2 accessory focusing on areas that are going to cause them issues down the road. With regard to the main exercises, you would want to do the acute exercise variable, something like 4 sets of 12 repetitions at 70% of their 1 repetition maximum at a 4:0:20 tempo and resting 90 seconds in between each set. For the supplemental exercises, you could follow the same acute exercise variables. And then for the accessory lifts, what you could do is go a little bit higher. You could do something like 15 to 20 repetitions at a 3:0:30 tempo and resting 60 seconds in between each set. That way you could accumulate a little bit more time under tension for those small isolation movements. With regard to the exercises, because they had some stability issues in their lateral rotators and scapular retractors, you could incorporate something like a dumbbell external rotation elbow on knee for the lateral rotators of the shoulder, and something like a 45-degree unilateral trap 3 raise with a dumbbell to work on the scapular retractors. But that is it. Rest period is up. Time for set number 2. And while we are resting, let's continue with the practical applications. And let's say somebody comes to you wanting to lose fat. They have 30 minutes to train, 3 days per week, and all they have are barbells. You performed a mobility assessment on them, and you found no restrictions with their mobility. And on the stability assessment, the only thing that you found was they were weak with their trunk stability push-ups, so they need a lot of core strengthening. On the strength assessment, you found that they were slow twitch dominant, and they had no movement restrictions whatsoever. In this case, what we could do is for the warm-up, start with something like an abdominal curl-up. If they had weakness in their trunk stability push-up, something like the abdominal curl-up is going to be a terrific exercise. And what you can have them do is 20 repetitions at a 3:0:30 tempo. So they would sit up for 3 seconds and then lower themselves down for 3 seconds. Then for the main portion of the workout, what you could do, since their goal is fat loss, is you could do a circuit. Since they're only limited to 30 minutes, a circuit is going to be ideal because you could get a lot of exercises in a short period of time. Something like the first exercise being a barbell front squat. A barbell front squat is going to be ideal because for this person, their trunk was really, really weak. So with the barbell front squat, they're going to have to activate their lumbar and thoracic extensors a lot more to maintain that upright position. Then the second exercise, you could have them perform something like a bent over barbell row. With the bent over barbell row, once again, because you are in a bent over position when you are pulling, you're going to have to activate your lumbar and thoracic erectors because it's going to be a lot harder and you're not going to be quite as stable as if you were doing something like a seated cable row. For the third exercise, you could have them do a standing military press. With a standing military press, because they are standing and pressing a weight overhead, their center of gravity is going to be a lot higher and it's going to require a lot more core engagement. So again, for somebody who failed the trunk stability push-up, something like a standing military press would be much better than something like a barbell bench press because they're going to have to activate the core a lot more. And you could finish off with something like a conventional deadlift. Again, great core exercise, and it's really going to help to improve their trunk stability. With regard to the acute exercise variables, you could have them do 3 sets of 15 to 20 repetitions at a 60% of their 1 repetition maximum with a 3:0:30 tempo, and this would take them 32 minutes, which would fall in line with their 30-minute program. But our rest period is up. Time for set number 3. And while we're resting, let's talk more practical applications. Let's say somebody comes to you and their goal is they want to gain weight and they want to build muscle. They have 90 minutes to train 4 days per week, and they're going to be training at a commercial gym. You performed a mobility assessment and you found no restrictions with their mobility, and you performed a stability assessment and they had no issues with regard to stability. During the structural balance assessment, it was indicated that they were a predominantly fast twitch muscle dominant athlete, and with regard to their movement, they had no restrictions with their movement whatsoever. Because we're going to be training at a commercial gym, ideally you would want to stick to straight sets, because if you're going to be doing something like supersets or circuits, it can be a little bit tricky, particularly if they're going to be training during a very, very busy time of the day. And what you could do, since they're going to be training 4 days per week, is an upper-lower split. This way they're going to be able to train everything twice per week, which is going to be ideal for hypertrophy. For the upper body day, they can do bench press first, then do rows, then for their third exercise, they could do shoulder press, they could do lat pull downs on their fourth, dips on their fifth exercise, and upright rows on their sixth. That way they're alternating between a pushing exercise and a pulling exercise. Next, let's get into the lower body routine. For the lower body, their first exercise could be squats, second exercise could be deadlifts, third exercise could be leg presses. Then, once we've done all of our heavy compound lifts, we could start moving into isolation work. So exercise number 4 could be hamstring curls, the fifth exercise could be leg extensions, and the sixth exercise could be standing calf raises. With regard to the acute exercise variables, we would want to do something like 5 sets of 8 repetitions at 75% of their 1 repetition maximum, following a 3-2-XO tempo, and resting 120 seconds in between each set. This is going to take 78 minutes to complete the workout, and then if we were to perform a warm-up, let's say we do 8 repetitions at 40% of their 1 repetition maximum, and then another 8 repetitions at 60% of their 1 repetition maximum before getting into the workout weights, the total time for all of the warm-ups is going to be 12 minutes. So that is going to be 90 minutes for their total program, which is right in line with their 90-minute training session. But our time is up. Time for set number 4. And while we're resting, let's continue with the practical applications. And let's say somebody comes to you and their goal is they want to simultaneously build muscle while losing fat. They only have 20 minutes to train 4 days per week, and they're going to be training at home, and all they have available are dumbbells. You performed a mobility assessment and you found that they had a positive active straight leg raise. They were only able to flex the hip to 45 degrees, and they were also limited in their overhead shoulder mobility. When you performed a stability assessment on them, you found that they had a weak VMO, or their vastus medialis obliquus, and a weak gluteus medius. And then on the strength assessment, you found that they were predominantly a slow twitch dominant muscle athlete. And then with the movement assessment, they were able to perform all of the movements, but on the overhead squat, they needed their heels elevated in order to perform the squat properly. In this case, what you could do is to warm them up, you could have them do something like a hip mobilization exercise, like a straight leg raise, and you could have them do a shoulder mobility drill to help improve their overhead shoulder mobility. Then for the main portion of the workout, you could have them do 1 exercise every single day. On day 1, they could do a heel elevated dumbbell goblet squat with bands around the knees. This is going to be terrific because they had weakness in their vastus medialis and gluteus medius. So by placing the bands around the knees, they're going to have to push out. That's going to strengthen their gluteus medius. And by having the heels elevated with the toes out, that is going to strengthen the vastus medialis. On day 2, they could do a bent over dumbbell row, and they could do it with the elbows tucked in. Then on the day 3, they could do something like a dumbbell bench press, and on day 4, they could do a supine dumbbell hip extension. The supine dumbbell hip extension is going to be great for strengthening up the glutes. Then, with regard to the actual acute exercise variables, you would want to do something like 5 sets of 10 repetitions using 75% of their 1 repetition maximum and a 4-0-2-0 tempo. And you could have them rest for 90 seconds in between each set. This, overall, it would take approximately 15 minutes to do the workout and then another 5 minutes to do the warm-up, which would be right in line with their 20-minute time allocation for the workouts. But our time is up right now. Time for the 5th and final set. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Be sure to like, share, and leave a comment as it'll help the algorithm. And if you enjoyed the content, show your support by subscribing to the channel by clicking on the icon in the bottom right corner. And if you really want to show your support, then consider becoming a member by clicking on the icon in the bottom left corner. These new high-quality videos aren't cheap to edit, and the $5 membership will really help with the video editing budget. You'll also get access to a ton of exclusive perks like early access to videos and this program design lecture playlist in the top right-hand corner. And if you want to learn how to do a one-armed pull-up, then check out the playlist on the top left corner.